It was the summer of 1914 when the world was plunged into the darkness of the Great War. The conflict between the Allied powers and the Central Powers had reached its peak, and armies from all over the world were converging on the battlefields of Europe. India, then a British colony, was no exception. Millions of Indian soldiers were drafted into the British Army to fight for the cause of their colonial masters. Over 1.3 million Indian soldiers served in the British Army during World War I, making it the largest volunteer army in history at that time. The Indian Army provided significant support to the British war effort, supplying men, arms, and ammunition. The Indian soldiers who were sent to fight in the Great War were primarily from the Punjab, the northwest frontier province, and Baluchistan. These brave soldiers came from diverse backgrounds, and many of them had never even left their villages before being drafted into the army. But they were determined to do their duty and fight for their country, even if that country was not their own. The Indian soldiers fought bravely on many fronts during the war. They were sent to the Western Front in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, where they faced some of the deadliest battles of the war. In the trenches of the Western Front, they fought alongside British soldiers and soldiers from other colonies, enduring the harsh conditions of the battlefield. Indian soldiers fought in many major battles, including the Battle of Neuve Chapelle, the Battle of Gallipoli, and the Battle of Jutland. In the Battle of Neuve Chapelle in 1915, Indian soldiers played a crucial role in capturing the German-held village of Neuve Chapelle, securing a British victory. One of the most significant contributions of Indian soldiers during the Great War was their role in the Mesopotamian Campaign. The Mesopotamian Campaign was a military campaign fought in the Middle East, primarily in modern-day Iraq. The campaign was aimed at securing the oil fields of the region and protecting British interests in the Middle East. Indian soldiers played a crucial role in the Mesopotamian Campaign, fighting in some of the deadliest battles of the war. In 1916, the Indian Expeditionary Force D, consisting of Indian soldiers and British officers, advanced towards the city of Baghdad. The soldiers faced fierce resistance from Ottoman troops, but they continued to push forward, eventually capturing the city on March 11, 1917. The Mesopotamian Campaign, in which Indian soldiers played a significant role, saw over 17,000 Indian soldiers killed in action or missing in action, and over 40,000 wounded or taken prisoner. Indian soldiers also fought in the Sinai and Palestine Campaign, which aimed to capture the Ottoman Empire's Middle Eastern territories. The Indian soldiers also played a vital role in the campaign in East Africa, where they fought against German colonial forces. They were part of a larger British and South African force that aimed to capture German colonies in East Africa. The Indian soldiers fought bravely, enduring harsh conditions and extreme weather, but they ultimately helped to secure a British victory in the region. Indian soldiers were awarded over 9,200 gallantry awards for their service in World War I, including 11 Victoria Crosses, the highest military decoration awarded for valor in the face of the enemy. Despite their contributions to the war effort, Indian soldiers faced discrimination and racism from their British officers. They were paid less than their British counterparts and were often denied the same privileges and opportunities. Indian soldiers faced discrimination and racism from their British officers, who often viewed them as inferior. This led to several instances of Indian soldiers protesting against their treatment, including the Singapore Mutiny of 1915 and the Royal Indian Navy Mutiny of 1946. The contributions of Indian soldiers during World War I were largely overlooked and forgotten in India's official history until recently, when efforts have been made to recognize and honor their sacrifices. However, This did not stop them from fighting for their country and for the cause of freedom. The Great War ended in 1918, and Indian soldiers returned home as heroes. They had fought bravely on many fronts, enduring the hardships of the battlefield and making significant contributions to the war effort. However, their sacrifices and contributions were often overlooked and forgotten as the British colonial authorities sought to maintain their control over India. The role of Indian soldiers in the Great War was a significant moment in Indian history. It demonstrated the courage and determination of the Indian people, who were willing to fight for their country and their cause, even if that country was not their own. The sacrifices made by these soldiers paved the way for India's struggle for independence, inspiring future generations of Indians to fight for their freedom. In conclusion, the role of Indian soldiers in World War I was a significant moment in Indian history, demonstrating the courage and determination of the Indian people. Despite facing discrimination and racism, Indian soldiers fought bravely on many fronts, making significant contributions to the war effort. Their sacrifices and contributions paved the way for India's struggle for independence, inspiring future generations of Indians to fight for their freedom.